And if you've got that resilience with it and you really want to work in the space sector, you can find the job, whether that's working construction on the test stands and in the launch pads, or whether that's doing something similar to myself, do as a from a customer point of view, or even there's jobs out there that people don't even think of. So medical, for example, there's doctors designing the next generation of spacesuits. I have to shout out to two of my own team, Laura, our head of legal. So we have a lawyer, space lawyer, who looks after our interests. There's various jobs you can do, but all of these will have problem solving, resilience, and communication at the heart of them.
My guest this week is Derek Harris, who is a business operations manager within the private space industry. Derek started his high schooling in Scotland, but completed it in America. And after completing high school, he worked in summer camps, eventually becoming a camp director, and then moved into banking with sales, debt collection, and analysing financial crime. Currently, Derek is the business operations manager for Skyrora. He's the CEO of EcoScene, and he's also a board member of the charity Stem the Violence. Derek, welcome to STEM with Mr. N.
Thank you very much, Stuart, for inviting me along. It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's a pleasure to have you on. Can we just start with talking about Skyrora? Who are Skyrora and what do they do?
Yeah, so Skyrora is a small launch company. And for those that may not be too aware of what's going on in the UK, basically we build rockets for placing satellites into orbit from the UK soil. So we're looking to fly from Saxiford, which is the very most northern point in Scotland. And we're talking about satellites. We're not talking about the satellites that would have been my parents' generation, which were the size of small cars. We're talking your small satellites, which can be anything from the size of a soda can up to maybe a couple of 100 kilos, but on average, they're the size of maybe a small bread bin, for example.
And what is your role within Skyrora as business operations manager? What does that involve?
So it's a cap that changes on a daily basis. So I deal with bringing in clients and dealing with our suppliers and meeting with them. But really, it can be any sort of challenges that come up. So I can speak with the government from time to time. I deal with our armed forces covenant, so I deal with the military, and what that means is, so for example, if someone retires from military service, we look to see if we can provide them with jobs coming into the space sector and things like this. So with the crossover of skills, so I keep an eye on a lot of different sort of avenues and channels with different public and private sectors, all basically while helping drive forward the commercial side of the company.
And are Skyrora only looking to do launches from the UK? Is that their particular focus, or are they looking to also branch out and launch from elsewhere in the world?
Certainly, for in the short term, it's all going to be from Scotland soil and Scottish soil. You will see we have done some in the past from Iceland and such, which was prior to all the regulations being in play in Scotland and the UK. For the long term, we believe there's huge markets elsewhere in the world as well that we could possibly adapt to. So there will be plans to look further afield. So watch the space, as they say, and you may see some stories in the near future.
And you mentioned there that obviously you're looking to launch from Saxiford, but are there other launch sites within the UK that are possibilities either for Skyrora or other people working in the industry?
Yeah, so certainly I think this is the most amazing thing. For such a small island, the UK has a potential for up to 7 spaceports, some being vertical launch, some being horizontal launch. So I know Snowdonia in Wales, for example. We saw the Virgin flight earlier this year that took off from Cornwall. We have Prestwick outside of Glasgow, and then when you come to the launches similar to ours, you have the Western Isles, Spaceport One. You have the launch site at Tongue, and then you have, as I said, Saxavord there. So the other vertical launch that I didn't mention was Macrahanish at the time, but I think they've pivoted to become more of a support player to help people do all their testing requirements and needs. But that may change still as business and commercial needs move forward.
And it sounds like the UK is a really exciting place for space development just now. Are there a lot of other players coming into that field? Obviously, Skyrora are in it. Are there lots of others now looking to the UK for their launches as well?
Yeah, we're in a very unique situation. When we started out, there was us and a few other companies that were sort of smaller in stature, what they were looking to do. But now we're seeing companies looking from Europe to come to Scotland to try and launch as well. So our main challenge there is to be the most reliable and the best offer that you can get from the UK. But it has been a massively growth sector. I don't believe really in giving out statistics and facts and figures because a lot of the time they can just be plucked out of thin air. But what we have seen is actual facts and figures of the matter was during COVID, the space sector was one of the only sectors that didn't shrink at all for job creation. So it now is a great time to be sort of, if you're looking to get into the space sector.
And that all sounds like that would be enough to keep one person busy as a full-time job. But I mentioned in the introduction that you're also the CEO of EcoScene. So who are EcoScene and what do they do?
So EcoScene is a spin-off out of the Skyrora family. So we have a umbrella company, so that sits above us. And when we do certain inventions and innovations, we see if they're worth spinning out to be a company on their own. And that's what happened with EcoScene. So EcoScene is previously is really a company that builds a system that allows us to take previously unrecyclable plastics and turn them into usable fuels, most notably for ourselves, rocket grade fuel. So if you can imagine people with the polythene bags coming from the supermarkets, once they come to life, so you have, for example, your bag for life from a supermarket chain, which we won't mention, and when they get tattered, you just hand them back, for example. But what then happens? Well, normally they can go to try and be recycled and they're incinerated. If they're not able to be recycled and they go to that incineration process, it's a waste. We can take those and then turn that back into usable rocket fuels or maritime fuels. So we're looking at the things like that and to try and make it a more environmentally responsible launch company.
We're hearing more about that for the space industry. Sustainable launches, I take it that is a focus of Skyrora as well.
Really, when Skyrora started out, we had the main core at the company was to be environmentally responsible. And you'll notice I say that rather than sustainable, because to become sustainable, we really need to get away from any sort of carbon-based fuels. But to be responsible, it's for us is to look at every part of the company, whether that be our supply chains, whether that's where we get our items from, how we produce things, to how we recycle our own waste, paper, everything like this. So for us, it's a bit of an ethos within the company to try and push that forward. And I think you're seeing that a huge amount recently. You had Optimat, Astro Agency, and the Space Scotland helped design the sustainability roadmap for Scotland in regards to space. So there's a huge push in Scotland and the UK for doing space the right way that we can do it now. There's no need to mimic what NASA's do. Don't get me wrong, what NASA and SpaceX do is outstanding, but we have a chance to try and clean up some of the things that they may have inherently in their history, so that are a bit more fuel rich or carbon producing.
And thanks for making that distinction there between, being environmentally conscious and sustainability, because you hear a lot about sustainability, so it's good to actually hear that distinction that you're looking at just now, but with a view to the future. So that's us now looked at Skyrora and EcoScene, but now going on to the third hat that you're wearing is the board member for the charity Stem the Violence. So can you tell us a bit about Stem the Violence and what they do?
Yeah, so again, this came through Skyrora. So we were watching our social medias and we started to get likes popping up going stem the violence, and I was like, what's this? So I got the team to reach out because I was curious. Stem the violence, what's this? It's a very hitting name, and I met with the basically the owner and the founder of the group, Fernando Salvador, from who is based in London, who's a police officer. And basically, what he's looking to do is use STEM education and try and help guide kids away from knife crime, gang crime down in London. Well, to me, that was just something that needed my support. You know what I mean? It's these kids down there, and I believe this a lot. We see kids who get left behind a huge amount, and it's a bit of a passion for myself. And if we can use education, so if I can speak to someone or I can show them videos from our tests and things like this to try and help them and inspire them to do things. So that was why I connected with them originally. Is I loved the idea. Fast forward a few years now, it started off as Fernando and a few people, and it's now sort of at this moment bedding out to become a fully fledged sort of charity to run. And they're pushing that forward. I've been working with them to try and bring in my connections from the space industry and other industries, so they can have a more diverse and culturally diverse group to look up to. So we know London's quite a mixing pot for that. So the last thing you want is everyone that's going to be speaking to them to look like myself and sing like myself. So being able to bring in for example, astronauts from other countries who'll speak. And I know there's a gentleman on there who is actually from London, and he's a science-based rapper. So he raps about science, and it's very, very cool. And these sort of things are actually talking the kids' languages down there, and it's beginning to make a difference on a small scale. So it's something that I really wanted to get behind. And when Fernando asked if I would join the advisory board to sort of help and keep guiding with them, it was an absolute pleasure and honor to be do so.
That sounds like an incredibly worthy cause, and it's one of the things that I aim to do with these interviews as well as show that diversity. So it's great that as well you've got that recognition of, you know, the young people needing to see that diversity and using your connections. It's such a great cause. And on that note as well, you are the first person that I've interviewed for this series who does not have a STEM background, as in, like, you've not got university qualifications in STEM. So you've obviously had a bit of a different journey. What has been your journey leading into obviously now being a major figure in a STEM industry?
So yeah, it's been a bit of a wild journey. I'm not gonna lie in that regards, and it really does go back from high school. So I grew up in an area called Pennycook, and it's not rich, it's not poor, it's right in the middle, and but my family's had hard times, and I got a chance to go to the States, uh, and play sports. So I went across and went over there and kind of got a bit of love for it, and ended up going back, as you stated earlier, and working with one of the camps, so a camp called DP Flint in New York, which is attached to Cornell University. And that was my first sort of touch on environmentalism and STEM. So I was working with the kids teaching outdoor science. So the university taught me how to talk about the water table, things like this. And so while it's not a degree, anything like that, I was given about a 3 week learning course thing to learn. And I did this for over a few years. And when that was done, I came back to the UK, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Played around with a few different jobs, ranging from like working in a bar, security, to Argos. For and then I got a chance to break into customer services at the HSBC Bank. So I started to work there and work my way up in different departments. Moved on to work in another bank and do a little bit of debt collection, which I didn't really like too much. If it was a bit hard work in regards to mental health wise and soul wise, sort of dealing with people. After, I think it's got a limited lifespan for anyone that works in that industry, or any person that really cares about their clients that they're dealing with. And then I landed at the Bank of New York, and that's when I started my sort of journey into financial crime and analyst. And after those years, I got to a point that I'd had surgery on my shoulder and I was a bit tired of what I was doing. I didn't know, I got to this sort of quandary like, well, I'm working on a part-time degree, I'm working on this, but I really don't know what I want to be. I'm coming up to my mid-30s. What do I want to do? And a friend said, well, I let me know what you're doing, sort of thing. He says, I'll pass your CV around, things like this. So I made the decision I was leaving, and he's like, well, I've got a job, but it's a startup company. If you're looking for a 6 month contract to help us. So I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do that. So a little bit wage drop, things like this, but it sounds like an interesting project. So it was Skyrora. It was so help set the office up, bringing a couple of new first staff members to help move things along. And we started to do it, and then we came on to bring some items into the country from distributors and such. So we had to look into import and export, which kind of lay into my background with government sanctions through the financial crime stuff. And because of that, I've ended up staying, and that was what 5 years ago now. So I've been with the company coming up 5 years, 5.5 years, and it for me, it's the different challenges I get to face every day, the ability to still do a lot of outreach and sort of try and help the sector go the way it needs. So I get a chance to call out on diversity and things like this, or I get a chance to help with outreach. So at the end of the day, I may not be a rocket scientist or such, but I've got that chance to sort of make a positive impact, and that's really what I've chosen to do.
And it's great there because your journey shows that there is no right way into a STEM field. It's just having an interest and the opportunity. And obviously, you had transferable skills from what you were doing within the banking industry to be able to come into Skyrora right, at the inception of it and hang about for the duration so far. Now, I'd said there about your transferable skills with your business operations, and you've spoken a bit about them. But what other skills are the space industry calling out for that students should be looking towards if they want to work in the space industry?
Well, I think one of the key one is communication. Something that I find, and I have a few students that I mentor at university, and I've recently just took part with in a pilot program where we brought some kids on to learn key development skills that will help them within business. So communication is the big one. Uh, Unfortunately, it's a skill that's beginning to diminish a little bit because of text messages, social media, things like this. So being able to be secure in how you speak with someone. Sometimes you'll be speaking peer to peer, friend to friend, that's fine. Other times, as I say, I've dealt with government. I've had to stand up and speak to government ministers. If you had said that to 12-year-old me, who spoke in a very broad Scottish accent with a lot of slang, I would have been like, no way could I do this. So communication is key for that one. Also, problem solving. You come from different backgrounds in different areas. You have different viewpoints on how you can do things. And if you can have those two key skills, that opens up a lot of different industries for you. Does it mean that you can jump into being a rocket scientist? No. You will need your physics background for that. But does it mean you can jump into working in supply chain, for example, for space companies? When there's a problem trying to gain a component, you think of somewhere else how to do it. These are the sort of crossover skills that you can get. So those are two of the most important ones I always go for, is definitely the problem solving and the communication. But also just resiliency. You will get knocked down at time to time and things. You will end up with the bad hand, if you're just to use a card terminology, and it's just about reshuffling and sort of going again. And if you've got that resilience with it, and you really want to work in the space sector, you can find the job, whether that's working construction on the test stands and in the launch pads, or whether that's doing something similar to myself, do as a from a customer point of view, or even there's jobs out there that people don't even think of. So medical, for example, there's doctors designing the next generation of spacesuits. I have to shout out to two of my own team, Laura, our head of legal. So we have a lawyer, space lawyer, who looks after our interests. And then we have our team like Victor, Neil, and Nicole who work in our accounts and financing team, who not only help us make sure that all our payments go out to all our suppliers, but make sure all the staff are paid and happy. So there's various jobs you can do, but all of these will have problem solving, resilience, and communication at the heart of them.
Yeah. And obviously, for some of the ones there that you mentioned, like rocket science and things, you will need university background and a degree and things. But are there opportunities for like apprentices to come through? Does Skyrora do an apprenticeship scheme, or are you aware of apprenticeship schemes within the UK space industry?
Yeah, certainly. In England at the moment, it's more defined. So there's more defined programs down for companies in England at the moment. For ourselves, we have had two, or we're just taking on our second graduate apprentice, which is a scheme where they will work 4 days with ourselves and go to university 1 day a week. Uh, we are looking at other schemes that are due to launch in the next 3 years with colleges, which are more technical based. And when I say technical, hands-on technical. So things like welders and things like this. So there's a lot happening in there. It's just unfortunate from inception to delivery, it can take a few years to get along there. But I think the more people that show interest with these things in the schooling system and the education system, the more the colleges will start to deliver them, which is great. But even if someone is not going those routes, so a couple of the guys that we have working with us have came out of being former army. So they went into the army, became part of the engineers corps. So they are what we would call our hands-on technicians. So one of the guys came out of the army, started working with us, and now he's the sort of people that we go to and say, right, we need to erect our test stand. This is the dimensions and this is the thing. So he then goes out and gets all the logistics people in. He gets the cranes to hold it, and he's the one putting it together and things like this. So it doesn't mean you need to technically go through a college or university. You can, coming from various different routes as well. As I say, that crossover from other industries. A big one is military, oil and gas, renewables, things like this, and even the normal aviation sector. So I'm seeing people cross over into the space sector from now.
And as you said away at the start of this interview, during COVID, that the space industry was one that didn't slow down with its employment. And by the sounds of everything you've been saying, it sounds like it's only going to continue to grow. So where do you think the future of the UK space industry is going? What excites you about the UK space industry going forwards?
At the moment, I do a lot with the universities, and what excites me is the passion that are coming out of some of the students that I get to speak with. And what I've seen over the last sort of 3, 4 years is some of the ones that have then graduated now starting up their own companies. So these are ranging from space awareness, data awareness. So what debris is in the atmosphere and where it's floating, things like this, down to I think one of the most exciting one I was talking to is someone that is dealing with building their own satellites to do with natural disasters. I'm trying to pick my words so I don't give it away what he's doing, but it really excites me that they can predict and monitor certain natural disasters, which will become more life-saving for people, sort of thing. So what I'm really seeing is not the exploration of Mars that excites me, it's the actual human consequences that can come out of what's coming happening at the moment. And so in the next 10, 15 years, you're going to sort of see climate change better monitored, you're going to see natural disasters better monitored. And I forgot the company that's doing it at the moment. I think it's IceEye, who are looking after the sort of penguins out in Antarctic and things. So watching the all of this come together kind of gives me a bit more hope for everything that's going on, environmentally wise as well. And it's just great to see the creativity coming out, and that's what really pushes me forward on a daily basis.
And it's amazing the amount of diversity that you've just said there, with people starting up their own businesses to look at specific things, and it's all still within the space industry. I think that also gives a lot of hope to people going through their education just now. and it's something I say a lot in these, that there's going to be STEM jobs in the future that don't exist today, and that you can make your own path. So I'm glad that's something that you came up with. But something which always excites me, and I hope I never got over the excitement, I always love watching a launch of a rocket. It still amazes me. Even the other day when I was out with my son and we were watching planes launch, still watching a plane launch amazes me. So if you can say, when is Skyrora's UK launch, next UK launch scheduled to happen?
Well, with that, we were aiming for the end of this year. We're still waiting for our license to come through, so that may push that into 2024 for that purpose. So hopefully within the next year or so, you'll get to see that. We'll also have some suborbital vehicles. We've got one we hope to go this year. We're currently in talks with a few different areas to have that. We did the attempted launch from Iceland with the SKL last year. It'd be great if we could do that again, but as I said, we've got ongoing discussions at the moment. So hopefully you will see another launch from us this year.
Well, that'll be amazing if I get a chance to see that this year. Derek, that brings us to an end. Thank you very much for giving up your time to do this. It's been brilliant speaking to you. Now, I'm saying I'm excited about looking to the future of Skyrora and that launch. I'm following Skyrora on social media, but for those out there that aren't and are just coming to Skyrora for the first time, where can all your information be found out there on social media, websites, etc.?
So certainly, if you just type in Skyrora into, I believe, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I don't think we're on Threads yet, so that seems to be the big one for today that's appearing. But I'm sure our team will be on there soon enough. So any of the most common ones you'll find us on, just type in Skyrora and you'll find us.